Am I live? Am I live? Yes, I am. I'm live. It's the Nazarite, bringing you Hebrew lore from days of yore. So yesterday, or the day before, depends where you were, it was the festival of harvest, Pentecost, the day where the children of Israel and to some degree the world received the Torah right at Mount Sinai. And the question is asked, now what? Now what? We received the Torah. Fine. We stood there mentally, spiritually, as it was thousands of years ago, and we got it. We renewed the covenant, and now what? This is a question that's asked of us. I think it's asked of us every single day. There's a teaching, I think it's in the Talmud, where the Torah every day proclaims, "Oh, who will abide by the what is it? I mean, the translation eludes me, and I'm not going to spend any time on it, but it basically means the time to study Torah is now. The disgrace, oh, who will abide by the disgrace of the Torah? Something like that. So the Torah was given. It was this phenomenal event, the assembly at Mount Sinai, and a very supernatural, metaphysical thing took place, and a spiritual, metaphysical Torah was given. In a kind of bridge was formed temporarily, and the Torah came down as a written Torah on stone tablets later, the whole thing, right? The voice of God, the horn blowing, the lights, the sounds. It was a big spectacle. And then what? Now it's on us to actually keep it. That's the second part, right? So counting 50 days from Passover to Pentecost, Chag HaShavuot, to the harvest, right? Doing everything there, and then the land gives us the fruit, and we take it, and now we need to actually do something with it. We need to consume it, we need to prepare it and consume it, we need to give it to others. The land gives us something, and we need to continue that. I don't mean to say that every food requires a process, but it does require action. So we received the Torah again yesterday, the Hebrew people, the world. And now and now what? And yesterday, according to tradition, on the holiday of Shavuot is also the day of death, right? The day of remembrance of King David. And I wanted to talk about the idea of King David and the Messiahs, and I might still do that now. We'll see. We'll see. But right now, I do want to talk about what it means to me, for me personally, what it means to keep that Torah. Because getting it is one thing, understanding it, right, is one thing, and carrying it out is another. So like I say, I pick and choose from the Torah. Unequivocally, that's what I do. I pick and choose, but I strive to choose, to pick and choose, pardon me, the things that are right for me, and the things that I consider to be of high value and purpose for me. Now, at different points in my life, I attributed this to different parts of the written law, and of the oral law for that matter. But I always seemed to come back to a kind of root, a few root principles, which I suppose would be the Ten Commandments, but I never thought of them as such. It's even greater than the Ten Commandments. Something very, right, like the Beit of Bereshit, the first letter of Genesis, of in the beginning, the I of in the beginning. It's something very quintessential. The written Torah came down, and now it's on us to do something about it and keep it. And this has caused so many problems, so much strife, because how do you keep this thing? First of all, you can't do it on your own. There's no one individual that can successfully carry out all of the commandments, because some of us are men, some are women, some are married, some will never be, some won't divorce, and some will be Nazarites, and some will be kings, and some will be everything and anything that, one individual in one lifetime cannot achieve this on his own, his or her, on their own. So it's a joint effort. It needs to be a collective thing. So the Torah says this about the children of Israel, but to a greater, in a larger global sense, it's the world, it's mankind. It's us finding and acting according to that balance. So the prophets say that there will come a time where everyone will have knowledge of the Most High, and it will cover the earth like the water covers the sea. And a prophecy I've mentioned many times in the past, I think, at least a few times, because I really, really care for it. It speaks to me on such a high level. I can taste it. I really can. When I read that prophecy, it's like so simple. A shift of consciousness that we facilitate through good action, through righteousness, through justice and peace and truth. The good stuff. Really, the good stuff. The fine attributes that we should strive to acquire, possess, and act in accordance with. It's that simple. I mean, it's simple and it's not simple. I'm saying this here, from the luxury of my apartment from my house in the Netherlands. Not everyone has it as good as I do, and I acknowledge that. Which is why I said this is my idea. It's for me personally. I'm in a position to read the Torah and to take the time, and I have taken the time. I studied Torah for years. That's what I did full time for a few years. And it's what I do part-time now, though I don't get paid for it. Or do I? And it's something, like I've said before, so infinite, with such depth. And yeah, you can pick and choose the verses which are seemingly or not seemingly very superficial, unimportant, insignificant, downright racist, misogynist, homophobic. Yeah, you could, and all that's there too. That's all there too. This is a physical manifestation, a written Torah. And it's something that is about this world, right? The other worlds and these spiritual realms and the spirit world and heaven and hell are not mentioned. Eden is mentioned, not heaven, like the Christian kind of traditional, 21st century heaven, right? That's, paradise. That's a whole other thing. It's not mentioned there. The Torah is about this world, this life, with all of its trials and tribulations. So you can find amazing things in the Torah as easily and as, openly, and it's like right there, as explicitly as you can find things that some would consider to be really horrible, right? Like putting gays to death for lying with a man. I'm not going to get into that whole thing right now. But I did speak about gays and gay rights last week, if you want to check that out. A little bit, I spoke about it. I didn't cover everything. The Torah. That same Torah that says you should kill people because of their sexual orientation, let's say. That very same Torah also speaks a lot of wisdom and a lot of truth. So yeah, I pick and choose. So as far as I'm concerned, what do I need to do now that I've re-accepted the Torah, that I've renewed my covenant, that I've renewed my vows to the Most High, as a people? It's something that I think, I'm going to have to continue thinking about. The Torah reveals itself to me constantly, all the time, anew, every day. Whenever I open up my Bible, there's something there. And even if I'm going through it for the millionth time, if that makes sense, there's still so much that I get out of there. Always something that I didn't see. It's whatever it is. Just like the sun rises every morning, right? And it shines. Even if there are clouds, that's all local. Even if there's a storm, it's local. And even if there is an eclipse, it's local. The sun is shining, whether I can see it or not. The Torah, the truth, it will out. And it shines, even if for some reason it seems very convoluted and unclear and invisible to me because of my circumstances and my own insufficiencies. It's the way of the world. It's nature. And the Torah was given to mankind. The Torah was given to the children of Israel, right? Part of mankind, part of that big family of earthlings. And here we have the laws of nature, and here we have the laws of physics. Yeah, here you are. And the Torah was given to us so we can actually keep it. Later on in Deuteronomy, when Moses says that the Torah isn't across the great sea, and it's not up in the sky, it's here in our mouths and our hearts to follow. So it was written in a way as people speak, and it's to be read in endless ways. But that's how it was given. This is the written Torah that we have. So now that we have it, we need to figure out what we do with it. And it doesn't have to be the same Torah of last year. It can be a whole new Torah. It can be something new that you see. It's just a question of opening up your mind, I suppose, to what the Torah is transmitting. It's the great spiritual antenna that's always giving out a pulse and a signal. And if you can tune in on that wavelength that you are personally in tune with, right, intuitively, there's something innate of you, a piece of Torah, a piece of the divine that's in you, manifested physically, much like the letters of the Torah are manifested physically on leather, right, on scroll of an animal. It's not leather, I mean parchment, which comes from an animal. And that higher Torah and lower Torah, that great wisdom and those misogynist laws, they exist as one because it's this world. We need to deal with it. But I pick and choose from the Torah because I want to pick and choose the things that I believe are overarching and that can be universal, that can be global. Not exclusively, but I certainly put my emphasis on things which I consider to be of the greater global mankind, and not necessarily the children of Israel or the Hebrew faith. The Torah points you in a direction of righteousness, and the Torah points you at a direction where, if you study it long enough, there's a teaching that says that it's like a betrothed, that in the beginning, until you're married, it will not really reveal itself to you. There's courting, and there's flirting, and there's the back and forth, and maybe even some rubbing. But the Torah doesn't reveal itself to you in fullness until there's a covenant there. When we received the Torah on Mount Sinai, that was the beginning of a beautiful friendship, but it's still on us as individuals to reclaim our piece of the Torah and to renew that personal covenant within the collective, and to find out how we tune ourselves, or how we, by changing ourselves, change the world, right, the mirror, in order to reflect something that's closer to how we really do vibe, the things that we consider to be truth and righteousness and justice and peace, right? Truly, by our definition. And you will find that in the Torah. You will find those things, and you will also find rivers of blood, malice, vengeance, animal sacrifice. You'll find all that there. And you'll also find wisdom, which I think, when properly utilized in action in the real world, it's something that can bring about a revolution. Now, you could say that the Torah was a revolution in the sense of that the Abrahamic religions all believe in it, and the children of Israel brought many revolutions and ideas and innovations into the world. Still, that is all, I think, or not all, a lot of it, certainly in the last few centuries, is more of the material, scientific, physical thing. And I don't know if we've had a global spiritual revolution. And that's what the prophecy I mentioned earlier is of Jeremiah, that knowledge of God will cover the earth like water covers the sea. It would just be, right? That shift of consciousness is something that we bring about when we all tune ourselves in. You can choose to look at the Torah that we received on Mount Sinai as an ancient, archaic, dark, and really piss-poor excuse for ethics, history, morality, or any kind of divine law. But I found that focusing on those things won't get me anywhere, but focusing on the things that I truly feel to be divine in the way that I connect with them and I can see them going long term, I think there's a nugget of truth there that you can't shake. You can't shake it. Many other things, you're able to you could question them. You could question everything, obviously. What I'm saying is that there's a kind of nugget of truth there in the written Torah, the physical Torah, the down, gritty, nasty, stank of life Torah that deals with all of that stuff. There's also that root that's also there. Maybe not discussed as much as the other things, as the controversial things. There's a lot of wisdom there. Building the physical vessel before you could pour in the important substance, right? To be kept and to be harnessed and to be utilized, you need a vessel. Building that physical vessel means getting your hands dirty. Building that physical vessel means that, yeah, there was a supernatural and metaphysical, monumental, assembly at Mount Sinai. The impossible became possible. God spoke. We received a written Torah, and then for thousands and thousands of years, it's on us to keep the tradition going and to say, yes, we received it there. Remember that, because now things look they look horrible right now. But the Torah that we still have is that very one that we received through this unimaginable, unfathomable, assembly at Sinai. And a whole people saw it. This is part of what differentiates us, in part, I think, from other faiths. It wasn't Jesus who was the Son of God or Muhammad the Prophet. It's a whole nation of people who, according to the Torah and our history and tradition, witnessed the Torah being given, God speaking. So even though even though God isn't speaking right now as he did back then, and even though that Torah has seemingly been dragged through the mud, and okay, to each his own, you can drag it through the mud. I don't know if I'd like it, but you're free to do it, I suppose. And I remember, for one, where it comes from. So I try to stick to the things that I see an immediate connection with, or an immediate connection to that assembly, making the natural supernatural, hearing the voice of God, seeing the divine presence. And seeing the divine presence and hearing the voice of God, those are things that come when righteousness and truth and justice and real freedom are involved. I don't think I hear it as loudly in the negative things, in the horrible things, in the malevolent and cruel and nasty things that go on in the world, even though it is part of nature. The divine, I feel, is really, really manifested in that triumph of the human spirit, which is manifested through good deeds more than anything. More than anything, I think. That divine energy, that divine soul that inhabits this body, it manifests itself a lot clearer and with greater strength when it's doing good. So I think that if there's one thing that we can take away from Shavuot, is that, as Buddha said, he was asked to sum up his teachings in one sort of mantra or one single maxim, and he said, do good unto others, avoid doing evil or wickedness, and make sure to clean your mind, or be diligent in cleaning your mind or purifying your thoughts. So this is what I'll leave you with, right? The Buddha, the enlightened one, who came back to the physical world to spread it, even though, to spread enlightenment. Same deal. The Torah came here from on high. Whether you'd like to believe it was really, however you want to believe it, it came, the root, the spiritual root is much deeper than the physical written Torah that we have now. It's a physical manifestation of it's a book, a written Torah, but it has a root that transcends it to a great degree. So let's hook on to that root. I try to do that. I want to do that more. I want to do good unto others and abstain from wickedness and to be diligent about purifying my thoughts. Let's have a wonderful continuation of the week. I'll see you Friday. God bless. Hey, Shalom.